Triebwasser here with Frogs Insider, the opportunity to sit down with TCU Athletic Director Mike Buddie. Mike, at this point, you're almost a veteran on the scene because of how much you've endured here in your first couple months on the job. How comfortable are you at TCU specifically and just settling into this new world of college athletics?
Well, I'm probably more comfortable at TCU after 6 months than I am just with our industry as a whole. And so I think every athletic director in the country, certainly at the Power 4 level, we're learning daily. What I like is we've got the House settlement signed. We kind of know this next iteration of our rules and regulations, but we know that there's going to be tweaks, and there needs to be tweaks, and how quickly those are going to happen, we're not really sure. So we're operating in this new environment, but it is truly a new environment.
You know, we're both coming off of being at media days, listening to the coaches speak, and it was pretty aligned across the Big 12 regarding those tweaks. And Sonny Dykes, TCU's head football coach, obviously talked about collective bargaining and the next iteration of this agreement. Do these become employees as their union? There's obviously a lot to be determined. But as you look forward and talk to athletic directors across the country, where does, from that perspective, from the administration perspective, where do you guys align on what you want to see going forward?
Well, I think where we align is we just want a level playing field. We all want to have the same set of rules and regulations. And so I think the voice of public opinion is saying this is all well and good that there's $20.5 million of revenue that can now be shared with student athletes, but where'd that number come from, and who made it up? And so that's where the voice for collective bargaining makes a lot of sense. And so I foresee a near future where student athletes have a voice in the process, and whether it's a mathematical formula or truly just input from our student athletes, they need to have a voice in the process. So I'm glad that the House settlement was signed. I think the judge, Claudia Wilkin, gave us some good indications of what her concerns were, and they were student athletes don't necessarily have a voice. What does it mean for Title IX? Who's representing the 11-year-old soccer player right now that no one knows is the next superstar? And so those are all valid questions, I think, that I'm glad that we're asking those. That gives us a map to try to attack this next set of problems.
You sent out a tweet on day one, right, of settlement that TCU had paid out, I believe it was $250,000 already. How do you kind of fulfill those goals, those expectations, those promises, while also knowing things can change and are changing literally every single day?
Well, we have contracts and we have deals, and we have told young people, we have given them our commitment that we are going to give them the opportunity to earn a degree. We're going to give them a scholarship with which to pursue that degree, and then for a great majority of our student athletes, a financial award on top of that. And so for us, the mechanics in the back of house, like actually making sure the money went from our account to their account, it sounds simple enough, but college athletic departments historically have never done that. And so it was important to us that our student athletes on day one checked their accounts, and exactly what they expected to be there was there, and that's what happened. So a small baby step, but again, it's one of those things. You don't want to be the national story that said, hey, on day one of this new era, TCU wasn't able to execute their, I call it payroll, which I guess it's the best, most similar term. So went off without a hitch, and here we're off and running.
You mentioned leveling the playing field, and I think, we heard that message really almost unilaterally across the conference. But there's another aspect that comes in with that too, and that's football, which is what everybody thinks of when they think of the House settlement and the salary cap, or whatever you want to call it, and then every other sport. And, I think it's Brett Yormark talked about prioritizing men's basketball, especially in the Big 12. That's obviously been a signature athletic program for this conference. It's been one of, if not the best conference in the country for basketball. Houston made a run and played a national championship game just this past season. But he also mentioned women's basketball, and I think that is, one of the most up-and-coming sports right now. That's probably one of the biggest areas to grab attention and to grab eyeballs. We saw TCU do that in a very significant way this past season. Talk about TCU's plan for investing specifically in women's basketball and why that's a priority for the university.
Well, it's a priority for the university for exactly what you just explained, which is it is one of the fastest growing sports in popularity in our country. And fortunately, thanks to Mark Campbell and some of incredible athletes, we're on the upward trend in college basketball. So TCU is kind of the hot stock in a sport that has become a hot stock. And so, what Mark Campbell was able to do with his team last year kind of captured the hearts of the folks here in Fort Worth. And we've seen now what a packed Schollmeyer can look like. The Louisville game was a magical experience for so many people, and so many of whom explained to me that they had never been to a women's basketball game before then. And so I think we have made lifelong fans, not just because we were winning, but because of the personalities on the team and the huge level of talent. I think people were expecting, a much less athletic brand of basketball. So we're excited that we happen to be trending up at a great time. And the new revenue share model is something that Coach Campbell came along at the right time and really kind of held us accountable and said, hey, you need to invest. And who better to invest in than someone who was able to orchestrate such a phenomenal turnaround here at TCU.
We saw Texas Tech as the easy example to point to. They put a 7-figure offer in front of a singular athlete in a women's sport and went from being a program that was irrelevant to playing in the College World Series and for a national championship. Do you see TCU trying to execute that vision? The ROI, or what's the ROI when you do something like that? It's obviously exposure. There's added interest. There's added interest in-house, but also on a national level. Is that part of the reason why you want to invest, and will TCU look to do that type of thing?
Absolutely. And credit to Texas Tech, it worked. And that's a lot of pressure on a young athlete, and she responded extremely well, and they were one game away from winning a national championship. And so, now that the House settlement is signed, you can't handle the NIL dollars the way that we used to. And so you do have to get more creative. It has to be legitimate NIL. But, we invested heavily in a women's basketball player just this past year for more reasons than just wanting to win a national championship. It's also, we want to be the face of college women's basketball. And, Olivia Miles gave us the opportunity to really capture a lot of momentum, to capture a lot of eyeballs at a time when people are really paying attention. And so not just her value on the court, but her value, it shows a commitment to winning in women's basketball. It shows that TCU can be relevant when the number one player in the transfer portal chooses to come to Fort Worth. And those things all have value from our enrollment plan as a university to the athletics department's plans as well.
I think it's easy to look at women's basketball. That's a program that's going to be on national television, that has a media rights deal. It's not the only program on this campus, especially on the women's side, where there's been success. And maybe there's not as obvious an ROI. Beach volleyball is coming off of a national championship. Rifle has multiple national championships. We see TCU soccer is a playoff contender and a national champion, has odds to win every single year. And then volleyball is one of the fastest rising programs on this campus alongside basketball. How do you balance, obviously basketball is an easy one. Poured money into that and investment into that. They made it to an Elite Eight, and now you've got an opportunity this is going to be a preseason favorite for a Sweet 16 once again. But there's other sports that have had that success and deserve to be invested in. How do you balance those decisions?
Yeah, and how ironic that before last year, all those other women's sports that you mentioned were the historically competitive ones, and now here we are, like literally almost overnight, women's basketball is leading the charge, you could argue. Well, it is interesting, and I'm in a fortunate position because we don't have to artificially create interest in women's athletics here. TCU, for whatever is in their secret recipe, as an institution, as a university, we draw the attention of young female students. And so for whatever reason, the cleanliness, the vibe of Funky Town, our great Greek life, our great faculty and staff, we are attractive to young females. And so what our coaches, from Coach Larkin to Karen to Eric Bell, they've all been able to utilize TCU as an institution, as a university, to get the eyeballs of young talented athletes. And then they sell our facilities and being able to compete in the Big 12. And I don't anticipate that changing. We can't distribute our revenue across all 20 of our sports. We have to be very selective in how and where we invest that. But we've chosen to really look at, in the simplest terms, the sports that we sell tickets to our fans is where we're going to invest the majority of our revenue share dollars, and that includes volleyball, soccer, and women's basketball on the female side.
Is it still a priority to keep those winning programs winning? We look at the future of Title IX, and historically, most people from the outside have said that's just equal scholarships. But it's a lot more than that, right? And it's a lot more in investing not just in your female athletes, but the females on your campus. How do you see the role of Title IX evolving? Do you believe that we're going to be on a scholarship equality going forward? Is that something that's important to TCU, or could we see sports added, subtracted, or the concept of college athletics changing for TCU?
That's a great question. With this administration in the White House, there have been some tweaks already made. We're all kind of in pause and wait and see what happens. But Title IX could be tweaked. This is a long-standing. Now, in the meantime, we're going to continue to adhere to it. But as you mentioned, it's more than just scholarships. It's facilities. It's access to facilities. It's access to social media graphics and all these things that our creative team provides. All of that is with a mind to allowing all of our women athletes to capitalize on their NIL, to be in a position to maximize whatever opportunities that exist for them that didn't exist 2 years ago. And that's really important. And so as we continue to do the math, and really Title IX is a percentages type of thing, we want to do it because it's the right thing to do. We don't want to check a box and say, hey, let's do the minimum to make sure that we adhere to Title IX. We have great opportunities, as you alluded to. Every female sport that we have is competing for a conference championship. And I've always said, if you're competing for a conference championship at this level, you're in the national conversation. And that's important to us. So as we look at our, women's tennis, women's golf, those sports that we're not investing revenue share dollars in, there are very few institutions in the country who are going to invest revenue share dollars. So they're not going to fall any further behind. And in a lot of ways, because of what our campus has to offer, I think that's an advantage for us.
You mentioned NIL and NIL opportunities. That word has meant very different things in the last 4 years, right?
That's right.
And it looks like it's cycling back to what it was initially supposed to be, and that's name, image, and likeness, and giving student athletes the opportunity to market off of themselves, their abilities, their social media, whatever else. Is that going to be a priority of helping connect students in DFW to businesses around here for them, for that beach volleyball player, that rifle athlete, or the equestrian athlete, or whoever else, triathlon, to be able to market themselves? Is TCU going to help with that?
Absolutely. So we've already added 3 staff. We'll probably add at least 1 more. We want to be the most NIL-friendly athletics department in the country. We want our young student athletes, when they come to TCU as freshmen with 50,000 followers on their Instagram page, or maybe 0 followers on their Instagram page, we want to run them through our car wash of creative graphics. We want to capture them in video. We want to capture them on film. We want to put those into our database, and they'll have access to it. So that when they go to class the first day and we're able to find partnerships through our outward bound NIL efforts, when we find a company locally here in Fort Worth or beyond that a graduate might own somewhere else, we don't want them to have to be distracted from their schoolwork, from their development as a student athlete. We've already captured a lot of the content that they would need to create graphics to partner them with Bob's Car Wash or Mike's Pizza Company, whatever it might be, so that we do a lot of the work for them. And then hopefully we pair them with a corporation or a sponsor that wants to have them represent them. And that's something that I regret with somebody with the personality of a Haley Van Lith. I don't think we capitalized on that as well as we could, because we just didn't have the pieces in place, and that part of that was the house settlement hadn't been signed and we weren't sure what the future would look like. But we're going to constantly have these young women, especially who are mature and marketable, and they understand brand awareness, and they've got great personalities, and we want to create opportunities for them.
You brought up Haley Van Lith. I was actually going to ask you, what did you learn from having someone who came in with such a reputation and such a following and was so marketable and had a lot of those things already in hand when she arrived at TCU? Did the university learn from that experience, and how do you think it'll help you with an Olivia Miles or a beach volleyball athlete or a soccer player or whoever else is out there?
Well, Haley was a bit of a unicorn. We got her at a point in her career where she had been at the pinnacle. She had felt those pressures, and and she just wanted to play basketball. And her press conferences were always so refreshing to so many of us. And she opened up, and she was vulnerable, and an elite level athlete who just had such great self-awareness. And it's a fine line between, hey, how do we almost take advantage of that for the betterment of TCU, versus, hey, let's make sure that Haley gets a few dollars in her pocket. And so, what I think she was able to do was help put Mark Campbell on the map as a coach who cares for you as a person first and foremost, provides a great environment to improve your skills on the basketball court. But I think what we learned was when you have a talent like that in your midst, how to maximize her brand value, and that in turn is going to help TCU as well.
We've talked about women's athletics, obviously something that I'm really passionate about. It sounds like TCU is passionate about, but I'd be remiss to not bring up a men's program as well that kind of falls in this outlier category. Men's tennis has won a national championship, played for a national championship. Dave Roditi has gotten as much positive publicity for this university as anybody. We're sitting here, during Wimbledon, where I saw the TCU hat more than I saw strawberries, right, during that week. How do you continue to support a program that's been so successful, arguably the best or one of the top 2 or 3 college coaches in the country, but a program that doesn't sell tickets and has a lot of international players, which is also a different, these are all different conversations. So how are you planning to support men's tennis going forward?
Well, not to overuse the word unicorn, but David Roditi is one as well on the coaching side. And I was really, I'm a month into my career at TCU, and I have to sit down with the reigning national championship coach and explain our new revenue share model, and that he's not a major part of it. And what I learned quickly was elite coaches, elite human beings accept that truth, and they immediately shift gears into how do I still capitalize on this new environment. And what I love about Coach Roditi is he's not afraid to roll up his sleeves and take the lead. Like, if you're not going to help me today, I'm going to get out of here and go help myself. And that's exactly why he's a national championship winning head coach. And so what I like about his situation is we still have the tennis center. We still have the facilities that we've always had. We still have the historical success. We still have all the great academic pieces of TCU, and those aren't going to change. And we don't need $6 million of NIL opportunity money to stay at the national championship level in tennis. It's a much smaller number, and with his energy and the staffing model that I described earlier, we'll be able to find opportunities for these young men who will go on to be, the Cam Norries of the world that bring huge publicity to TCU, as you mentioned, and gets us all excited to continue to support that effort.
Did he come to you with the water idea? Did he run that by you, or when he thought of that kind of, again, that outside the box, that go and get it philosophy? What did you think of that? How does that encourage you with that program specifically?
Well, he didn't, and I would imagine that was probably in the works as I was arriving, if not before. I saw that on social media, and I sent it to our compliance officer, and I said, is this okay? And he said, yes. Coach has gone through all the right channels, but to your point, like, it's brilliant. Like, a lot of coaches have ideas, and they're just like, well, I'm too busy to execute. But David's not afraid to execute, and I encouraged all of our department, our marketing folks, like, hey, until somebody pulls you by the collar and says, hey, that was over the line, like, don't be afraid to try aggressive, creative opportunities. And David's doing this for one reason. It's to get the most for his players as possible, and I certainly respect and appreciate that.
We're just a couple of weeks from fall camp, and that means we're going to have football, volleyball, soccer, so there's going to be student athletes and students, and this place is going to look very different a month from now in a really positive way. You're going into your first full year being in charge of TCU Athletics at a time where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of change, but there's also a lot of excitement. Yeah. What is your vision for your first full year leading this athletics program, both big picture and then specifically with the non-football sports on this campus?
Well, it's an inflection point on so many levels, right? Chancellor Pullen, it's his first full academic year as our new chancellor. Mike Buddie, first full year as the athletic director, operating in the brand new structure of NCAA and CSC now, college athletics. And so there are tons of unwritten expectations going into this year, and I think what resonated when I interviewed for this job is the fact that I was at West Point for the last 5.5 years, And there is no manual to run an athletic department at an academy. We couldn't try to do it the way that TCU does it. And so I've always tried to be innovative and creative in our approach to how we solve problems. And so as we know, there will be problems, there will be challenges. I feel very blessed to have inherited a phenomenal stable of head coaches who are great human beings and also extremely competent at what they do. And so I can focus my time, on the macro level at helping Chancellor Pullen enact his new strategic plan, of which the athletics department is a very key component, as one of his 4 pillars. And so I want to be a great member of his cabinet. And then, of course, as you mentioned, we want to win football games. We want to win Big 12 championships. And I think good athletic directors are like good insurance policies. You should never hear from them. You should never see them, but they're there if something goes really good or something goes really bad. And so I'm going to try to steer this ship from the secret room up here in Schollmeyer Arena, because our capable coaches know what they're doing. And as long as they continue to put the focus on our student athletes and take care of them, care about them as human beings, and care for their mental and physical health, we're going to be in great shape. So many of my peers in the Big 12 are struggling to figure out, where's the money going to come from? How are we going to attack our facilities? How are we going to continue to educate our student athletes? We really have solved so many riddles that most schools have not gotten to the bottom of, and I feel very fortunate to be on board and can't wait for 25, 26 to begin.
My last question to follow up on that. You said all those things are in place. There's all that alignment. We heard Sonny talk about that at media days, and how anything less than a Big 12 championship appearance is unsuccessful. Is that the way you feel about the majority of the sports on this campus right now?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I would say majority is a key, because not all of our sports are resourced at a high end compared to their peers. Football's a tricky one. I think what we heard in Frisco the other day is, I think 95% of athletic directors, when House settlement was signed, we were relieved and said, this is great. It's a level playing field. We know the rules. Let's go and attack it and let the best team win. But the other 5% immediately ignored that and just started thinking, how do I get around all of this to be able to keep paying kids more and more and more? And what that tells me is, they feel if it's a level playing field, they're not going to be successful. And so I'm glad to be aligned with Coach Dykes and Jamie Dixon and Mark Campbell and all of our coaches who feel like, if you give us a fair fight, we're gonna come at you pretty good, and we like our chances, and that's how I approach it. And I'm just excited to kick this season off.
Well, I think we're all excited to have you running the helm this year, and I think it's going to be a great season for TCU Athletics across the board.
We'll find out. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate you.
Appreciate your time.